so against the backdrop of technological innovations in emerging markets, like I said, I just described what I'm doing right now. So consider it like presentation of an extended abstract of what I do. So what I'm looking at is impact of innovations on emerging markets. And let me explain what's interesting about this. I was first intrigued by the following set of events. Things like the BP oil spill in the US, the Japanese nuclear reactor accident, which is after the earthquake. Then also there are a series of coal mining accidents in China, which I would expect is probably underreported, but I can't say for sure. But and all of these are somewhat unexpected because these are not from your these are from countries that are technologically pretty advanced. So what I'm trying to talk about, so then I started building a model about the impact of technological advancement in how products collapse. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And I begin with a stylized story, sort of, which will motivate the problem. I'm a mining engineer. My undergraduation is in mining engineering. And I've been to many coal mines in India. And what used to happen is, as it is at that time, the recovery was pretty bad. If I recovered, let's say, 40% of the available coal, I was a very successful mining engineer. So that much used to go waste. And on top of that, when you do underground mining, you have to leave some coal. The reason being, the overburden might collapse on your head. And what used to happen is they used to have some thumb rules. And because the technology was not precise or advanced, they used to multiply that number by 3 or 4, call it factor of safety, and leave it there. So, for an example, let's say if one sector of my underground coal mine, I estimate that I need to leave 2,000 tons of coal, or or the estimate is like, I don't know, maybe 2,000 to 4,000 tons. That's my technological precision. Then what I'll do is I'll multiply the biggest number by 3 or 4 and leave 10,000 tons or 12,000 tons and get out of that. Now consider a situation where 20 or 30 years later, if the technology improves and my estimation of amount of coal to be left is much more precise. What might presumably happen is that I say that earlier I used to say 2,000 to 5,000 tons, but no, that's not true. It's like 2,100 to 2,300 tons. By now, my technology allows me to be precise in my estimate of what is to be left, and it also brings me some confidence in my estimate. And consequently, I don't really multiply this factor by 4 as earlier and say, okay, just to be safe, I leave, let's say, 3,500 tons. So earlier, the redundancy in the system has sharply reduced. Now, what this does not take into account, as an example, is, let's say, the distribution of earthquakes. Now, if I look last year, there are something like 3.1 million earthquakes last year alone. The thing is, most of them are undetected. We don't feel them. And even among those which do happen, which are big enough, what happens is there is some redundancy in the system which might take care of a large distribution of these earthquakes. But then, once I start eliminating the redundancies, my system becomes more sensitive to this. So this is the kind of story that I began with, to look at the impact of innovations on product collapse. And what I also saw was increasingly, of course I'm not I don't know these things very well, but from what I could understand, a lot of CEOs were being rewarded to eliminate costs and redundancies. And quite similarly, again, I'm not a finance expert, but earlier on, I would expect that the bankers were much more conservative in their spreads, which they used to offer to the customer, and their business used to go on. But now they have to be more aggressive and look into more sharper markets, lesser margins of safety. And you did have some banking related disasters, again in the developed world. And when I started modeling it, the way I began was, I looked at the cost structure of the firm, and usually what happens is when you do a competitive model or any game theoretic model of this sort, price is the decision variable, price or maybe position. But what I am attempting to do right now is to do something else, in the sense, with improved technology, there are two effects. One is my estimate of the stress to the system becomes sharper, just like as the example that I mentioned earlier. But it also has another impact, which is my technology itself or my production process itself becomes better, more streamlined or more flexible, so that I can do more with lesser raw material in some sense. So then what I conceptualize, and unfortunately I don't have the slides, but is that the manufacturer makes a conscious decision to make the product more robust than the minimum required level. And I model that as a decision variable. So in some sense, the way to imagine it is that there is a variable cost of production which is dependent on technology, which goes down, and on top of it you invest more to make the product robust. And in this situation, that extra investment is the decision variable. And what I find is, well, initially I was disappointed. I expected to see that, with reduced cost, people will try to extract even more profits, because then the estimate of the risk is sharper. But it was not the case. In the monopoly case, what I found is that the manufacturer would actually invest more to make the product more robust, because it frees his hand to do so. And then I wondered what's happening till I got into competitive scenario. And here something very interesting happens. There's an asymmetric effect. If there are two firms with competing technologies, or with different levels of technologies, let's call one developed and let's call it underdeveloped or emerging. And if I put in my opinion, a reasonable assumption that there are diminishing returns to scale to increase technology, so that is the extra benefit I get from improved technology in terms of cost saving is increasing at a decreasing rate. What I find is that any increase in my technology has a dampening effect on increased investment in robustness for my competitor. And this effect is much higher if the innovation is from the technology which is inferior. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if in an emerging market, let's say there are two products made in a developed market and emerging market, if there is improved technology and it has these said effects that I explained, which is that it reduces my variable cost and it improves my risk assessment of how much stress it should withstand, then what is going to happen is there's going to be a much higher reduction in level of redundancies in the product in the developed market. And so what I would say is that today, if let's say Brazil develops a very good, efficient let's say aircraft, then what might happen is there might be a greater cost-cutting kind of exercise in the US rather than the other way around. Now, to me, the important part of this paper is it is difficult to avoid, and it is not just because of technology, it's because of price competition. Price competition forces you to do that, and that is what I currently find. but it's a work in progress. So just some technical details. What I do is I model the amount of, at any point, the amount of force in the system to be distributed with a support which is inversely proportional to the level of technology. And similarly, cost is also, the variable cost also decreases with increased technology. And all this combined with any regular price competition kind or quantity competition kind of a model yields me these following results. And again, like I said, this is a work in progress, so any comment is appreciated. And I think this is, although not as directly as the other articles, this is still relevant to emerging markets. And like I said, the impact here, to me at least, can be seen in the developed markets. For example, in Newsweek, I saw that there was an article which said exactly something similar. Like BP's oil wells had gotten deeper and deeper, but the walls had gotten thinner and thinner. Very similar to the Japanese nuclear reactor also. There is some corner cutting on safety. Again, this I don't have the site on that yet, but again, it's in a reasonably developed market. And from my interaction, my limited international business interaction, I have a lot of respect, I mean, of the way the Chinese people manufacture their products. I was into ready-made garments manufacturing and export, and we used to be consistently undercut. And one time we had the opportunity to see how. So what used to happen is, so the way it works is you have a fixed width of cloth which you get from the factory, which you use to cut the patterns for the shirts or garments that we manufacture. What we could, if let's say I could make 2.5 shirts from this length of fabric, they would make 3 and do it in a very efficient way. So in a similar way, I can expect that especially if there is shareholder pressure in a coal mine, I don't know if I can tell them that I want to waste this much more revenue just because there might be an earthquake tomorrow. Rather, a better answer could be, especially in an environment where cost cutting is rewarded, to say that, look, I'm extracting as much as possible and maximizing your dollar's worth in this climate of price competition. And again, I will repeat, because it's a last minute, I don't have the slides, but I wish I could get your inputs regarding the specifics of my analytical model, but hopefully